Hi everyone. So today we are going to be going over the Utah Dene Baikia Land Project, the Protect Bears Ears organization. This is conducted by Daisy, Gina, Jasmine, and Josh for this project. Next slide. First, we'll be going over what is the Utah Dene Baikia Land Project. In the Navajo tribe area in Utah, they pronounce Dene, or Dene means the people, and Baikia means land. So together, it's the land of the people. It is a native-led, values-driven nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting ancestral Native American lands. Their main purpose is to preserve and protect cultural and natural resources, support indigenous communities, and prompt healing of the land and people. It is located in southeastern Utah and commits to cultural conservation, indigenous knowledge, community organization, education, mapping, and land policy advocating. They work with multiple tribes to protect the Bears Ears region. Their work is decolonization in practice, responding to historical and contemporary injustice they've faced for decades. The UDB's mission seeks to counter these issues by calling for recognition of Indigenous stewardship, spiritual ties, and management rights over lands outside formal reservation boundaries. Tribes in the Navajo have deep connections to the landscape, culturally and spiritually have experienced seminal historical processes of disposition, treaty violations, marginalization, and exclusion. From 2010 on, the Navajo tribe worked together to build this organization to spread decolonization. Moving on to the next. We have historical connection to events based on what we learned in class. So starting with historical policies like the Indian Removal Act and Trail of Tears institutionalized their conquest by physically removing Native peoples from their homelands. Actions that mirrored what Utah Diamondbackia continues to resist today through land stewardship and advocacy for ancestral protection. The ideology of the Manifest Destiny, it justified European and later American expansion as divinely ordained and led to indigenous displacement and genocide. For the Navajo and Ute people of Utah, this mindset justified U.S. encroachment, cultivating in land theft and cultural suppression. Concerning the cultural and political aspect, assimilationist policies such as the Dawes Act divided communal lands into individual plots, further dismantling tribal sovereignty. The Croix Law land, or Law of Peace, influenced the formation of the U.S. Constitution, but this contribution was erased in dominant histories, showing how indigenous governance models were appropriated without recognition. The UDB's advocacy for traditional ecological knowledge in managing Bears Ears continues this legacy of indigenous governments and environmental ethics that predates the U.S. itself. Concerning the resistance and resilience, the Indian New Deal of the 1930s represented a brief acknowledgement of the tribal sovereignty, later undone by the tribal termination policies in the 1950s. The Wounded Knee in 1973 was a powerful act of reclamation and protest that laid the foundation for contemporary movements like the Utah Diné Biké and the UDB's creation of 2010 and its leadership in the designation of Bears Ears National Monument, built in 2016, represents a modern manifestation of decolonization. Their work responds directly to centuries of displacement and silencing. Moving on to Gina, we have.
Next slide. What does the organization Utah Diné Bikéyah stand for, and what does it do? UDB is a Native American-led organization that focuses on a wide range of values and the spiritual connection between indigenous people and their land. Next slide. Utah Diné Bikéyah. Their purpose is to protect the Native American culture and their ancestral lands. They aim to preserve archaeological indigenous sites. They also want to promote the power of healing to people and their connection with the earth. Utah Diné Bikéyah is translated from the Navajo language to the people's sacred lands. Next slide. Protection of Bears Ears proposal. Founded by the Utah Navajo people in 2012, the ancestral lands of Bears Ears lie outside reservation boundaries and continue to hold significant historical and spiritual meaning to the Utah Navajo people. Other local tribes have joined to preserve their future access. Next slide, Bears Ears National Monument, Utah. The Bureau of Land Management is committed to protecting the land of Bears Ears in collaboration with Native nations and other stakeholders. The archaeological, historical, and ecological preservation of Bears Ears is a valuable resource to ancient history and the shared culture of this land. Next slide. Bears Ears National Monument, Utah. Tribal consultation under Section 106 of the NHPA. Federal agencies must consult with tribal nations when projects affect historic properties, including sites of cultural relevance to Indigenous communities. The Bureau of Land Management is in direct consultation with Native nations to ensure the protection of tribal sovereignty and cultural resources to implement cooperative decision-making on land management issues affecting tribal interests. Next slide. Connection with module materials. Winona LaDuke discusses the importance of preserving the historical roots of our ancestors and the diversity of food sources to maintain resistance to outside factors. The connection to Utah Dine Bikea is the idea of preserving protected lands and natural species for the survival of all humanity. We must promote biodiversity and educate future generations on essential teachings that originated from our ancient ancestors. Otherwise, these traditions could be lost forever. Next slide. Connection with module materials, what the California Dream means to Indigenous peoples. California Dream for Indigenous peoples means implementing decolonization. The organization Utah Dine Bikea is not only about protecting ancestral Native American lands, but also Native American cultures. They provide a solid network for Indigenous peoples to rebuild, educate, and strengthen their communities, while also encouraging decolonization. Next slide. Connection with module materials. Our spirits don't speak English. The Dawes Act of 1887, also known as the General Allotment Act, forced assimilation, boarding schools were established in late 19th and early 20th centuries. Native Americans were forbidden to speak native languages. Traditional names changed to more American names. Separated from families, encouraged to abandon identities and cultures. Utah Dine Bikea is an organization focused on decolonizing Indigenous communities. They promote education, protect ancestral lands, and preserve Native American languages for future generations. Next slide.
As we have discussed throughout the course, the doctrine of discovery can be looked at as having four parts: claims on unoccupied lands, meaning they were uninhabited by Christians, the theft of land, proxies laying claims of discovery, and societal domination. Coaster used Bears Ears as an example to expose the national park system as generally exemplifying the doctrine of discovery, finding, quote, how the construction of public land erased indigenous claims to space and privileged the interest of a certain public. The public land system was constructed by government explorers and surveyors who had the interests of settlement and resource development in mind, end quote. As recently as 2017, the size of the monument was reduced to allow for an expansion of uranium mining. This was later reversed, even after proposals to reduce the park even further. In the event that these protected lands are opened up by the feds for private development, it will represent the same historical proxies granted to companies and individuals endemic to the doctrine. The man in this image is Mark Maryboy, seen here overlooking Cedar Mesa, part of the Bears Ears National Monument. Next slide. How do we think about all of this critically and in the context of history? In a conversation about Bears Ears, we hear from two academics with deep roots to this land: Cynthia Wilson, a tribal member of the Navajo Nation from Monument Valley, and Angelo Baca, who is both Dene and Hopi and is a coordinator with Utah Dine Bikea. During the talk, Ms. Wilson shared how in her conversations with elders, they insist that Bears Ears be spoken of not as a phenomenon detached and therefore tangible and surmountable, but as being part of one's identity and their ancestral heritage. She says, quote, You are Bears Ears. You can't just talk about it. You have to live it. End quote. Mr. Baca goes on to say how the history of this space informs the indigenous relationship, and that the monumentation of a place negates that history, and therefore the relationship by socially severing the ongoing, living, breathing tie that the Dene, the Hopi, the Ute, and all peoples who belong to this land continue to share. This image shows the house on fire ruin, an ancient Pueblo dwelling. Next slide. From our course lectures, we learned that conquest is defined as the subjugation and assumption of control over a place or people by use of military force. This continues today as the threat of military force remains ever present and, as we are seeing in Los Angeles, Portland, a reality when systems of oppression are confronted. So long as national parks are controlled by the federal entities that carry the threat of military force, the culture of conquest remains. Seen differently, our modern cultures of conquest manifest in the popular perception of these lands. When someone sets out to tour, document, and experience these places, they often use language akin to conquest. To hobbyist explorers, Bears Ears is a playground, a place to be conquered, not by armies, but by camping in and near sacred spaces. This image shows two YouTubers from a channel called Rock the Park sitting in a great kiva. In the video, they say, quote, Bears Ears is an explorer's dream, and refer to it as 1.3 million acres of untouched wilderness. Next slide. For thousands of years, the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, the Dene or Navajo Nation, the Ute Indian tribe of the Untaore, the Hopi Nation, and the Zuni tribe have had a sacred relationship with Bears Ears. To this day, these groups hunt, fish, and gather inside the Bears Ears National Monument. They engage in ceremonies of reciprocity, some of which have occurred for hundreds of years. The task of stewardship, if it can be called that, is delegated to a set of federal departments like the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service. The staff at these agencies are educated by non-Indigenous people, scientists, academics, and so on, about the land's history. They are told a monolithic, white, non-Indigenous version of the story of these lands. The other great funneling of the story into a single narrative is found within the American tourism industry, a program that greatly benefits from national monuments. Aditye's warnings about how foreigners portrayed her people in absentia apply here, in that America's regard for indigenous lands will be seen entirely influenced by the mechanisms motivated by money, and not heritage. The image shown is a screenshot of the Utah Office of Tourism's homepage. To find Cedar Mesa, click on the middle link next to the one that will lead you to golf destinations. Next slide.
As far as the significance of modern day, the Utah Diné Bikina organization engages in numerous acts of decolonization by exercising sovereignty, protecting its sacred land, revitalizing its cultures, and opposing myths and erasure. These methods range from educational programs on agricultural techniques, traditional foods, artisan residence platforms, to cultural sensitivity. They also practice native languages, engage in environmental preservation efforts, and bring together different indigenous groups to build community. Firstly, they are exercising sovereignty by having shared authority with the national government to collaborate on strategies to take care of this realm. Indigenous community members have gained their power back through successfully proving why Bears Ears should be a national monument. Furthermore, the people leading the nonprofit are protecting Bears Ears National Monument and the surrounding areas, which have tremendous cultural significance because the land is a spiritual homeland for the five tribes leading the preservation efforts: Navajo, Hopi, Zuni, Utmantin Ute, and Uinta or Rayute. They can defend the land from modern environmental threats such as drilling, mining, and uranium sites that are justified by the colonial way of thinking that views natural resources as features available to exploit. These processes directly contradict their values in nature-mindedness and spiritual approaches to living, so fighting these operations is an act of decolonization. Additionally, UDB revitalizes its cultures by speaking and spreading native languages among each other and teaching the younger generations. They also teach community members about nutrition and the history of farming techniques in each indigenous nation. These activities actively go against the suppression of these people's identities, which colonization aimed to achieve. Lastly, UDB pushes against myths and erasure by hosting programs that spread awareness through storytelling of real events and cultural awareness, fostering fair representation of Native Americans. This education challenges harmful ideas that exist today about Indigenous nations, which originated from colonists. As for why we chose UDB on the next slide, we chose this particular topic because it sheds light on the different methods of preservation that are being practiced to honor Indigenous peoples. It addresses environmental, social, and cultural aspects of reclaiming power among Native Americans. And for the next slide, which is our reflection on our understanding of Native people and their communities, it has impacted our understanding of Native people and their communities by drawing attention to the strong emphasis on spirituality that exists within their set of values. Furthermore, we have a deeper understanding of how strong and deep-rooted the connection to the earth is. It is hard to imagine people better suited to handling land conservation than these communities. There is a pureness and religious quality about caring for nature among Native people. Another aspect we learned is just how important it is for their nations to have ties to one another and to really stick together. There is such a strong emphasis on maintaining community. As for our artistic choices explanation, we chose to use Microsoft PowerPoint to showcase our findings, share photos that tell stories, and show viewers what the Bears Ears Monument looks like, all while inspiring a sense of urgency to preserve this land by supporting UDB. We wanted to present visuals of different cultural practices utilized by UDB to display the wide variety of work that they do. Hopefully, viewers finish the presentation feeling confident in their understanding of UDB's contributions to this part of the U.S. and the importance of sustaining their role in protecting Bears Ears National Monument. This is our works cited page, and thank you so much for listening and watching.